Let's go today. Inspire your troops today. Inspire your troops today.
If you guys want to be remembered forever, this is how you do it.
All right. We win the game. This is a legendary defense. Put an exclamation point on your work.
It's over, folks. The Pittsburgh Steelers have won the Super Bowl for a sixth-time unprecedented.
It's time now for Black and Gold Central Radio, exclusively on the Pro Football Central Radio Network. Let's get those terrible towels waving. And now your host, Mike Batista.
Hey, I wanna change. You're a black heart devil and I can't explain why I wait for your face. You're a hotel lover on the back end dealer this rate. Every night she seems to change her name. Doesn't matter who you really are.
Greetings, Yinzers and non-Yinzers alike. Welcome to Black and Gold Central Radio here on the Pro Football Central Radio Network. We were on vacation last week and we're back. And a pretty eventful vacation for me. I had a birthday and I turned Dick Hoke's uniform number. So you might have to do a little research to find out what my age is now. But we are scheduled today to have Andrea Hangst, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. If I'm not pronouncing it right, I will learn how to pronounce it, and I will pronounce it correctly when I'm talking to her. But we are scheduled to have Andrea here a little later on, just in a couple of minutes. She is the AFC North lead writer for Bleacher Report. Also, Chris G. He just goes by Chris G. I don't know what his last name really is. It would be a great moment in radio history if we reveal that, but I'm not expecting that to happen. But he is a Steelers featured columnist for Bleacher Report, and he will be on a little later. So a Bleacher Report theme with the guests here on this episode of Black and Gold Central Radio. And we're sponsored by Onnit. Lots of good vitamins and supplements. Pro Football Central Radio listeners get 10% off by going to onnit.com/football radio. That's ONNIT.com. Football Radio. Training camp is well underway here. Got a couple of minutes or so before Andrea comes on, so just want to go over a couple of the main bullet points of the Steelers' training camp developments so far. A lot of live tackling going on. It really has not been seen since the Chuck Noll era, and I can't wait to talk to Chris about that later on because he's actually attended a lot of Steelers training camp this year. Doing some live tackling, you know, after an 8-8 season and after not winning a playoff game since 2010, the Steelers do need some kind of a kick in the pants. But there is an injury risk to that kind of aggression, that kind of pace in training camp. And there's also the risk of the Steelers wearing down late in the season. Mike Tomlin, in his first year as coach back in 2007, admitted that he maybe was a little too tough in training camp. And that team did wear down and ended up losing a home playoff game to the Jacksonville Jaguars in the wild card round in 2007. Won the Super Bowl the next year. But that first year of the Tomlin era was a disappointment. It's not looking like Heath Miller is going to be ready to go in the season opener, but the good news is that David Paulson, the second-year tight end, the seventh-round draft pick last year, seems to be having a pretty good camp, a really good camp, getting better as a blocker and catching all sorts of passes thrown his way. Mike Adams looks like he could be the left tackle instead of Marcus Gilbert. So that's going to be interesting to follow, and that's kind of something I'm in favor of. And Cortez Allen, he had surgery on his knee August 2nd, and the Steelers are hoping that he's ready to go in week 1. They let Keenan Lewis go in free agency to the New Orleans Saints because they plan to move Cortez Allen into the starting job at cornerback. So they really need him to be healthy. So we can talk about all this with Andrea and later on with Chris right after this.
Birthday, dear Football fans, check footballcentral.com for all the latest NFL news and analysis. Also, check out the very popular Pro Football Central radio network for awesome NFL talk around the league. Go to profootballcentral.com. profootballcentral.com.
We are here with Andrea Hangst, the AFC North lead writer for Bleacher Report, and this should be a really good interview because we had some really good practice time for this interview about a minute or so ago. So, welcome, Andrea.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Well, as the AFC North lead writer for Bleacher Report, Andrea, it seems like a demanding job. You do a lot of writing, and you do some video with that too. What's a typical week like for you in that position?
Basically, it's just keeping an eye on what's going on with the four teams in the AFC North. Hitting on major storylines that might come up, especially, injuries and things like that now that we're in training camp and the preseason's about to start. And then, just taking a look at problems that need to be solved for each team, issues they may have, maybe players that might break out, and, just putting together, thoughtful columns about all four teams in the division all week long.
What's it like during the NFL season? What's a typical Sunday like for you?
Sunday is an extremely busy day. It starts early in the morning, keeping an eye on, inactive players, things like that, any major developments on that front. Then, of course, watching the game, taking extensive notes. I'm a big note taker. I've got piles of notebooks full of football stats and numbers and names and things that, would be cryptic and weird to somebody who doesn't know what I'm talking about. And then, putting together columns, reacting to the games, reacting to anything major that happened, being insane on Twitter. So that's normally, 14, 15, 16 hours on a Sunday.
Well, I imagine now that and people who are the lead writers in Bleacher Report for any of the divisions, there's probably a good chance that they're a fan of one team in that division. So say one of these divisional lead writers is a fan of Team A, but on that particular Sunday, Team B is playing Team C in an interdivisional game or a division game. And then they're playing at the same time as Team A. So what does that lead writer do if two teams in the division are playing each other at the same time as the game for the team that they like a little better?
You got to cover it all. You got to pay attention to all of it without bias. You just watch all the games. You try to get a hold of Sunday Ticket and keep an eye on everything. Make sure you know what happens when everything goes into halftime. I haven't had a real issue with it, just because football, is my passion. So it doesn't matter what teams are playing. I love it all.
So one of the things you're talking about, Andrea, was as part of what you do is all the problems, going over the problems that teams have. Now, the Steelers, like every team, have their share of problems. What are some of the ones that are at the top of your list?
The top of my list is definitely fixing the run game. We've seen a lot, over training camp and after, especially since they drafted Le'Veon Bell and how he's been performing in camp, that it seems to be a little bit better this year. I'm still concerned about, the switch to outside zone blocking. They've been really working on it in training camp and getting better at it, which is a good sign. But there are still offensive linemen who are, projected to be starters for the Steelers who don't have a background in it, aren't very athletic. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Todd Haley was saying the inside run just became predictable, which it absolutely did, and it didn't, produce desired results, to say the least, last year. So that's something, they're definitely going to need to fix. The other thing is trying to generate a better pass rush. Last year the Steelers had a lot of issues getting to quarterbacks, because James Harrison injury issues, Lamar Woodley injury issues, Paul Amalu injury issues. And without, those three guys on the field last year in whatever combination, they weren't able to get effective pressure. So they need to find ways to mitigate the fact that, now James Harrison's gone. Lamar Woodley his hamstring could flare up at any time. Paul Amalu could get hurt in a myriad ways. at any time, and then, still be able to generate a pass rush even without these impact players on the field, which is something that they've really been focusing on with the defensive ends, which is pretty smart because last year, if you recall, they sent Brett Kiesel on a little bit of pressure, more than usual, and he was pretty effective at it. So those are the big problems, generating pass rush and running the ball.
Yeah, well, as far as running the ball, how much is a little more familiarity with Todd Haley's scheme? How much is that going to help with running the ball?
I mean, I think it helps somewhat, but again, because they're switching their blocking scheme, they're basically switching their entire philosophy in terms of running the ball. So, a little bit of extra familiarity is good, but again, you also have a rookie running back who's going to be probably getting the majority of the carries as the season goes on. And so that's somebody who didn't work with Todd Haley last year. I think, Dwyer, Jonathan Dwyer, Isaac Redmond, I think that they'll have a greater level of comfort, hopefully. I think Todd Haley's scheme affects the passing game a little bit more than the run game. I think last year was a confluence of unfortunate events when it came to both their running backs and the offensive line situation.
I think too, and let me know if you agree with me, that the Steelers ran the ball best last year when Mike Adams was healthy, the right tackle, and he might be the left tackle this year. How much do you, if assuming Mike Adams can stay healthy and stay in the lineup, how much do you think his presence is going to help?
I think it's going to help immeasurably. I mean, Marcus Gilbert, bless his heart, he's just not cut out to be a left tackle. The question is, though, with both Gilbert and Adams is just the athleticism. Do they possess enough of it in this run blocking scheme? As a pass protector, I'm very, enthusiastic about Mike Adams. Left tackle is his natural position. He would have been the full-time starter there last year if he hadn't gotten hurt and had time to, be on the practice field and get to know, the speed of the game and things like that. As long as he stays healthy, I think that he'll, help Ben Roethlisberger stay healthy, and that's incredibly important this year.
Yeah, it seems every year, 2 years in a row, Marcus Gilbert's anointed as the left tackle, but then somebody beats him out. Last year it was Max Starks, calling Max Starks off his couch, and this year it seems like it might Mike Adams. Well, speaking of quarterbacks, Andrea, I kind of have a two-part question here. If you were starting a team, which AFC North quarterback would you want?
If I was starting a team, what AFC North quarterback would I want? I would probably go with Andy Dalton. He's a bit younger. He's a little vanilla, but at the same time, you don't have to find this crazy offensive line who can protect this guy who holds the ball forever like Ben Roethlisberger. And I think that there's you can mold him. There's still things you can work with him. I think Joe Flacco is wonderful. He's set in his ways. I think, you want to go young. So I go Andy Dalton.
Okay. And the other part of this question is, if you needed to win one game, which AFC North quarterback would you want?
If I had to win one game, I would go with Ben Roethlisberger. Absolutely.
What would be your thought process behind that?
He has experience winning games. He knows when, if the pressure's on. He's been in that situation in the regular season, playoffs, Super Bowl. There's a lot to be said for Joe Flacco's clutch game. He's got a really good one. But there's something a little bit more proven about Ben Roethlisberger, so I trust him more in one game.
I figured the guy I'm about to mention, I didn't figure would be in either of your answers, but how do you see the future panning out for Brandon Weeden over in Cleveland?
This is a huge year for Brandon Weeden. He turns 30 in October. If he's going to be the long-term answer in Cleveland, and I know, everybody says, but he's 30, he's so old. Long-term answer in Cleveland, 5 straight years with the same quarterback would be a huge step forward for the Cleveland Browns, so I don't think there's anything wrong with, only 5 years of Brandon Weeden? Well, 5 years is forever for quarterbacks in Cleveland at this point. I'm very optimistic about Whedon this year. Obviously, the pressure is extremely high on him. This is it. If he doesn't make a leap this year, he's done. He's done in Cleveland. There's no way he's going to be a starter next year. But I think that this system with Rod Chudzinski and North Turner really plays to his strengths. Trent Richardson, healthy, he's going to be a bruiser. He's going to, carry a lot of the offensive workload, so that's going to help out Brandon Whedon. I like Whedon's receiving targets. Travis Benjamin, Greg Little, what's his face? All those guys, Jordan Cameron. I like his receiving targets. They're working a lot out of the shotgun right now in practices, which is something that Whedon did a lot of in college, but didn't do a lot of last year with Pat Shurmur as the Browns head coach. So I think that he advances this year. I'm pretty excited about him. But yeah, it's make or break. I mean, it's a lot of pressure.
Let's talk a little bit about the biggest off-season development in the AFC North. The James Harrison going to the Bengals. What do you think about that? Is that going to be? The balance of power is probably tilted towards Cincinnati anyway, but does that really, really shift the balance of power away from the Steelers and more toward the Bengals? What do you think about that in general?
If it was 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I would say that James Harrison going from the Steelers to the Bengals is a huge move. At this point, it's more of like a psychological move. Like, oh no, now James Harrison could be going after Ben Roethlisberger, but what I really think the value of Harrison is in Cincinnati is twofold. One is, adding, situational pass rushing element to their linebacking core. Which is important because, while they do run a 4-3, they don't get a lot of push from their linebackers. Only Vontaze Burfict was really impressive last year. So, it gives them options. The other thing too is just leadership. The Bengals are an extremely young team, both on offense and defense. And, just having this veteran leader, even if he's, as we saw on Hard Knocks, kind of standoffish from his teammates, which I'm sure he was, similarly in Pittsburgh because James Harrison's James Harrison. But, having that veteran presence, I mean, there are going to be things that he's going to teach the younger players on defense that I think will be really invaluable. But in terms of that being a huge, impact, taking away from the Steelers, adding something huge to the Bengals, not in 2013, maybe in 2008.
Yeah, I'm going to have to wait till next year to see James Harrison on Hard Knocks because I don't play on HBO. If the Steelers were ever on Hard Knocks, then I'd be forced to pay for HBO again. But
yeah,
I'll wait till next year on that. Now, what are your predictions for the AFC North this year, Andrea?
It's pretty difficult to predict this division this year. With so many roster changes going on in Baltimore, most of which seem to be for the best. I like it, but it's we still have to see what it looks like. And then you got the Bengals emerging. I think that they are building something really good for the short and long term. And then the Steelers coming off of an 8-8 season, and obviously they're very refocused. They're more aggressive, they're ready to go. But then at the same time, did they really improve enough of the areas that resulted in them being 8-8 last year when you really look at it? And then, the Browns, they're not going to win the division. They're not going to threaten to win in the division, but they could probably be at 8-8, maybe 9-17 this year. So it's really difficult to predict. I mean, you could have 3 teams with 10 wins and 1 team with 8 wins. You could have 2 teams with 8 wins and 2 teams with 12 wins. It's really, really difficult to predict right now. The only thing I feel comfortable enough in saying is that I think the Bengals win the division.
Okay, I tend to agree with you there, unfortunately for Steelers fans.
Yeah.
The more I think about the Bengals, the more they scare me.
Yeah.
I mean, they just don't even really have to blitz that much for their front 4 to get to the quarterback.
Nope.
And then the other thing that I've been thinking about the AFC North, and I don't know how close we are in agreement. I see the Steelers finishing 9-7 and probably contending for the playoffs, but maybe falling short because you can't really. It is difficult to get in at 9-7. Is that how much in the ballpark is that with what your prediction would be?
I'd say that's pretty close. 9-7 sounds about right. I mean, I think the combination of whether or not they fixed enough of their issues from last year. There's always going to be the question of Ben Roethlisberger staying healthy. He's only had one 16-game season in his career so far, so it's like you can almost count on some point Roethlisberger's going to miss at least one game of some kind of injury, and then now we've got Landry Jones and
Bruce
Gronkowski, and so who knows about, what they can do if Roethlisberger misses time. And, it's kind of, they're really easy stretches on the Steelers' schedule, but when you talk about the Steelers playing easy games, they're never easy. They struggle against teams that they should beat really, really easily. So, there's the question of, if they drop some, to the Raiders again, something like that, that could be trouble, because they also have harder teams this year. They have Green Bay, they have the Chicago Bears, things like that. I think 9-7, that sounds about right. I think I could get on board with that.
So, Andrea, what else? You also have a couple of other websites going on besides Bleacher Report. I think there's a fantasy football website, right? And then there's the F-Ball, Andrea, something like that.
Yeah, I do fantasy football columns for Pro Football Focus. It's profootballfocus.com. And I do a weekly podcast on Wednesdays, the F-Ball NFL podcast, which you can find at f-ball.tumblr.com or fball.podomatic.com or iTunes.
Okay. All right. And then what about Twitter? Where can we find you there?
You can find me at fball, that's FBALL_Andrea on Twitter.
Okay. Any interesting ASC North articles in the works for Bleacher Report that we can look forward to?
Yeah. I mean, today, a piece went up just discussing the Steelers' options at tight end while Heath Miller continues to recover from his knee injury. Next week, I'll be looking at whether or not Greg Little is going to be the player that breaks out for the Browns this year. And, of course, if anything major or crazy happens during preseason week 1, I'll be sure to be covering that beginning of next week or tomorrow.
Yeah. Basically, preseason is, did anybody get hurt? That's kind of
Exactly. Who got hurt, and maybe who shined a little bit, who helped the roster positioning a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so happy that the Steelers preseason game, their first one against the Giants, is on the NFL Network. I'm not going to watch it live because it's preseason, but I got the DVR set. So.
Yeah, no, I'll be watching it live, of course. I'll be taking notes against the regular season.
Right,
crazy
right. Yeah. Well, yeah, I would watch it live too if I didn't have somewhere else I had to be. But
yeah, for sure.
Regular season, I make sure there aren't other places I have to be.
No.
Okay, Andrea. Well, great. Well, I appreciate you coming on. And
for sure.
Thank you. We are here with Chris G., a Pittsburgh Steelers featured columnist on Bleacher Report with the same capacity that I worked on Bleacher Report also. How are you, Chris?
I'm doing great, Mike. How are you doing today?
Good. Interesting. Just out of curiosity, what made you decide to just use your last initial for your name on your byline?
You know what? That's a great question. Basically, with my form of employment working in education, I just didn't want the last name out there, mainly so I didn't have a bunch of kids checking my Twitter account. Not that I put anything out there, but that's pretty much it.
Okay, good. So it's just sort of a way, a little bit of a shroud of identity there. So that's good. I can understand that. So, Chris, you've attended a lot of Steelers training camp this year, right?
Yeah, I've been to 5-6 practices so far.
Okay, and you went last year as well?
Yeah, it's basically a yearly thing for me. Try to at least get there about every day that I can the first week, and do what I can after that. But yeah, it's I'm out there.
Okay, so all right. So you've been to Steelers training camp a lot, and my first question is, how different is camp looking this year with the live tackling going on?
In all my years of going to training camp, I can't say I've ever seen anything like it. You see the goal line drills were the popular in the Bill Cowher coaching days, and that's something that I always look forward to going out to camp. But this year, they took it live inning seriously. You're used to seeing the guys just wrap up in the live drills in the past, but this is all out hitting. It's exciting. It's fun to watch, and there's also the concern of the wear and tear of these guys. But it's a young team, and I think it's good for them in the team building process.
So what's going on is, instead of people wrapping up like you said, people are just getting tackled and going to the ground.
Guys are getting tackled. They're going to the ground. It's you're not seeing a receiver go over the middle and Ryan Clark lining them up and knocking them out, but the backs in the backfield, it's very physical up front, and the linebackers are coming in. They're wrapping up. They're bringing to the ground. They're gang tackling. Basically everything that you see in a regular game as far as normal, every play tackles, nothing of the big hit varieties, but by far the most physical camp that I've ever been to.
Did you see this paying dividends for the Steelers this year?
I think so. Last year, I don't know. I don't want to question their mental toughness, but at times they seem to be not the mentally strong teams they've been in the past, and this type of attitude and physical nature of practice, I really think it sets the tone for the season. It sends a message from Tomlin. He has a reputation of being a player's coach, and sending them outside and having live tackling drills really hits home that we want to be a physical football team. We're the Pittsburgh Steelers. We want to be the most physical team in the league, and with a bunch of younger players expecting to contribute this season and in the near future, I think it's an important message to send, and it should definitely play dividends as the season plays out.
Okay, now I have some questions about the Steelers' draft picks and how they're doing in camp, or at least questions about the position battles they were involved in. This Jarvis Jones, now it would seem like Jason Worlds, just because rookies don't usually start on defense for the Steelers, Jason Worlds might have been the front runner to start at outside linebacker opposite Lamar Woodley, but Worlds his toe has been injured and he's missed a lot of practice time. Does that put him behind Jarvis Jones now in that position battle?
At this point, I don't see Jones leapfrogging Worlds quite yet. He's got the veteran experience. He knows the defense better. Dick LeBeau and the coaching staff are going to trust him more. However, from what we've seen from Worlds, I think he's a solid player. He's not a dynamic player. He'll be able to get to the quarterback with the help of his teammates, maybe some coverage sacks. He'll do okay in the ground game. He'll do okay dropping in coverage. Jarvis Jones has potential to be a playmaker. We've seen it in practice. He's gotten in there in some sacks, and that hasn't gotten the press, but everyone, I think, has read the J.J. Watt-like ball swat out of the air and make the interception, and those are the types of plays that you can get from Jones. Is he going to make some mistakes? Yes. Is Jason World going to make some mistakes? Yes. I think I'd rather have the guy making the plays out on the field, and maybe not from the start of the season, but let's work him in there sooner rather than later, maybe before mid-season.
It's funny. It's funny how, from what I've read from you and other writers, it's funny how Jarvis Jones got better when the pads came on. He would seem to be struggling when when they didn't have pads on, but then when it got a little more real, he seems to have done better.
Yeah, you get that physical nature of the game. He wasn't necessarily considered to be the most physical presence, as saw some scouting reports referring to him as a speed rusher, but the guy likes to hit. He put a nice shot on Marcus Wheaton coming over the middle one practice. Didn't knock him to the ground or anything, but if he wanted to, he could have, and he seemed a lot more comfortable once the pads came on. Still, you can see that he's thinking, he's looking around the field to find his spots, but he got to go out there and play football, and that's what's exciting to see from these guys, and that's what we're going to see on Saturday night.
Okay, now on to the Steelers' second-round pick. My question as far as Le'Veon Bell goes, is he going to dance around like Rashard Mendenhall did, looking for a hole? How does Le'Veon Bell differ from Rashard Mendenhall?
It's night and day. I mean, both backs came into camp as rookies, very impressive physical specimens, but we've got Le'Veon Bell. He's tall. You notice that right away. He's very thick, and he is not a dancer at all in the backfield. He can get to the outside, maybe not the same speed as Mendenhall, but he has that quickness to get to the outside, and he's shown really good ability to cut back and find the holes. In fact, that's one of the things I've liked about him in camp so far is compared to Redmond and Dwyer, he has that ability to stretch it to the outside, cut it back, find the hole, make his own yards. And that's something that we didn't see from the other running backs last season, Mendenhall, Bell, and Dwyer. And it's something to be excited about with Bell here.
He got dinged up a little bit, right, in training camp. I think he missed a couple of practices. Is he doing okay health-wise?
Yeah, it seems the typical bumps and bruises. A lot of times you hear these guys are held out of practice, but they talk then, well, if there's a game on Sunday or a game on Saturday, regular season, I would absolutely be in there. And at this point, it's early in camp still. We haven't played a preseason game, got to see a preseason game yet, and you got to take the precautions, keep these guys fresh before the regular season gets started. But I think you're seeing that with a number of the veterans and rookies who are getting days off here and there.
Marcus Wheaton, now with the Steelers' top two receivers are projected to be Antonio Brown and Emmanuel Sanders, but Antonio Brown took a little bit of a step back last season, and Emmanuel Sanders hasn't caught more than 44 passes in a season. With the progress Marcus Wheaton has made, what are the chances Marcus Wheaton, as a rookie, becomes one of the Steelers' top two receivers?
As a rookie, barring injuries, I'd say a 0% chance. I've really been impressed with Sanders and Brown in camp. They're healthy. Ben's getting them the ball, and you can tell these guys put in the work in the off season. But Marcus Wheaton, he's picked up the offensive system fast since missing out on OTAs. I've been really impressed with his route running, particularly across over the middle of the field. He adds an element of speed there, ability to run after the catch to make big plays. And I think he's going to be pushing for that third wide receiver role pretty quick as long as he shows stuff in the preseason games, because he's looked very comfortable so far in practice. And I'm pretty excited about his opportunity to make a nice impact as a rookie.
What do you think about Mike Adams moving over to left tackle?
Oh, man, that was a bit of a shocker, a little bit, mainly because I really like him at the right side. The Steelers want to run the ball to the right side, and Adams, once he gets his hands locked on a defender, it's done. He can really clear the pathway. We saw him struggle as a rookie at left tackle, but I think back to guys that we've seen in the past, say Max Starks or Marvell Smith. They started their careers out on the right side, shifted over to the left, and we have seen some pretty good performances from those guys. Adams, potential solid left tackle, but I'm concerned with his pass protection right now. We'll see what he can do there. It's his second year, so hopefully we've seen some growth, but until he proves it on the field, I think we should be a little bit worried with our left tackle situation.
Yeah, I was worried. I was worried about having Marcus Gilbert there at left tackle, and absolutely. I am. Yeah, I don't know. I'm a little bit excited with Mike Adams only because at least he's done something. And Marcus Gilbert to me hasn't really made that much of an impression in his 2 years. He's only really played a year and a half, so. Not sure if you agree or disagree with that point of view, but I am pretty fairly excited to see what Adams can do there with a year under his belt.
I think at this point they just need the best 5 out there wherever they may be playing. So
right.
I'm on board with you there.
Now, there's some injury concerns at cornerback. Cortez Allen just had surgery, and the Steelers are hoping he's ready to go in Game 1. In the meantime, it looks like Liam Gay is going to start in his place. And they have a few other injuries, too. I mean, Marcus Van Dyke is injured, but he's just basically a special teams player. Their 5th-round draft pick, Terry Hawthorne, has missed some time. He's been injured. Curtis Brown, I think, has had some injury problems, too, but I have read that he, as a cornerback in this camp, he's improved a little bit. Do you agree with that at all?
Well, considering Brown's shown, I don't want to say nothing, but he's shown minimal over the first couple years of his career. He has shown improvement. I've taken note. He's added some passes down, which hasn't been common for the other defensive backs in camp with all the injuries. So I have been impressed in that area, but as many passes as he bats down, he gets beat just as many times. So he's kind of that middle-of-the-road guy, a guy that I wouldn't feel comfortable out there starting. I'm not even sure if I'd feel comfortable with him in a nickel role at this point. He just has all the athletic abilities, but is unable to put it together on the field. Not enough growth quite yet, but we've got another couple weeks to see if something clicks for him. But right now, there's concerns there.
Okay, Chris. What are your to wrap up here? What are your 2013 predictions for the Steelers in terms of where they'll finish in the AFC North, what their record will be, and if you see them making the playoffs or not?
Well, I think the story of the 2013 Steelers is going to come down to their health. Healthy team, you keep their starters out on the field for a majority of the season. You're looking at 11-5, 12-4 record, contending for an AFC title, AFC North title rather. It's a tough division, and but I think they can definitely contend. I felt they could have contended last year if they stayed healthy. But as you saw last season, a couple injuries, and you're falling into a 8-8 type of team, middle of the pack NFL team. But the high end definitely is a playoff spot, and if all goes well, a deep playoff run, I think. But you got Ben Roethlisberger at quarterback, and anytime you have a quarterback like him, you've got potential to do some special things.
So the 11-5, 12-4 prediction you had, that's contingent on them staying healthy for the most part.
Yeah, you need Ben to be playing 14, 15, 16 games. You need Mike Taylor in there. You need Troy out there. You need Lamar Woodley at full health. These guys have to be on the field. Their depth just is not developed enough at this point to have younger, inexperienced players step in and still maintain a AFC North type title contender.
Okay, so your official prediction is in the 11-5, 12-4 neighborhood.
Yeah, let's go with an 11-5 as my official prediction. If all goes well, 11-5.
Okay. Well, great. Where can we find you on Twitter, Chris?
On Twitter, I am ChrisG_FC, and try to stay pretty active during the football season and bring some good Steeler discussion into the equation.
Okay, great. Well, I appreciate having you on, Chris, and good luck with the season. Good luck with Bleacher Report.
All right, thank you very much, Mike.
That was Chris G., who, like me, is a featured columnist for Bleacher, Pittsburgh Steelers featured columnist for Bleacher Report. He has a pretty optimistic prediction about the Steelers, 11-5. Andrea Hangst, who we had on earlier, the AFC North lead writer for Bleacher Report, is a little more in line with what my prediction is for this year's, more of a 9-17. But I wanted to share with you an experience I had when I was away on vacation. in recent year, or in maybe 10 or so years ago, 15 or so years ago, one of the experiences of summer would be to go to a drugstore or a supermarket. And in late June and July, the magazine racks are loaded with NFL preview magazines. And, you know, you pick one up, and then there's a preview on every single team, and you're basically set for the summer. You got plenty of beach reading material for the summer. That, now with so many more sources of information, with information that's much more immediate, much more at your fingertips, that's not quite as much of a tradition anymore, picking up those big NFL preview magazines, because it's easy for them to get outdated. Nonetheless, I was at a CVS a couple of weeks ago when I was up in Massachusetts, and I decided, what the heck? I'm going to pick up a magazine. So I picked up the Athlon Sports Pro Football 2013 preview. Now, of course, this was probably published in early June, because it just mentions Aaron Hernandez as a tight end for the Patriots, makes no mention of his arrest or anything like that. So it is outdated in that respect. But I decided to give it a read, and I looked, and they predict the Pittsburgh Steelers to win the AFC North. And I was a little bit surprised to read that. Well, so much for flying under the radar, because the way things have been happening over the last decade or so is the Steelers usually do best when no one's expecting them to have a good season. That happened in 2010 after they missed the playoff. They missed the playoffs in 2009, and then no one expected that much from them in 2010. What do? They go and they reach the Super Bowl. In 2003, they missed the playoffs, and then they got a rookie quarterback the next year. They go 15-1. So the Steelers usually do best when they're flying under the radar, but according to the Athlon Sports, they're not flying under the radar. Their one little capsule for why they predict the Steelers to win the division is playoff absence leaves Steelers hungry, dangerous. And then they predict the Bengals to finish second, the Ravens to finish third, and the Cleveland Browns to finish fourth. So, and actually, it's interesting, since Ben Roethlisberger has been on the Steelers quarterback in 2004, the Steelers have not gone more than 2 years without making the Super Bowl. They made it in 2005, missed it in 2006, 2007, won it in 2008, missed it in 2009, made the Super Bowl in 2010, and then missed it in 2011 and last year. So according to that formula, if the Steelers don't make the Super Bowl, it's going to be the first time since Ben Roethlisberger has been the quarterback that they will have gone more than 2 years without making the Super Bowl. And since 2004, actually since 2001, they followed a very tidy formula. They've gone to the playoffs 2 straight years and then missed it the third year. They went in 01 and 02, missed it in 03, went in 04 and 05, missed it in 06, went in 07 and 08, missed it in 09, made it in 10 and 11, and missed it last year. So that seems to be a very predictable, tidy pattern. And if that pattern keeps going the way it has gone in 2013, then that means the Steelers will at least make the playoffs and maybe even make a Super Bowl, because nobody is expecting much from them this year. And I'd love to believe it'll happen that way, but the NFL isn't some tidy half-hour sitcom that follows a predictable formula. It's almost like some of these, like Athlon Sports, it's almost like they're hedging their predictions against the fact that the Steelers do well when nobody's expecting them to do well. Well, there are reasons people aren't expecting the Steelers to do well. I have 3 concerns here, and one of them is the outside linebacker situation. Even if it looks like Lamar Woodley's in great shape this year, but even if he stays healthy and doesn't miss a play this year, he'll have either Jason Worlds or Jarvis Jones starting on the other side. So we're talking about Jason Worlds, who, as Chris G pointed out, needs some help sometimes to get some sacks, a lot of coverage sacks there. Or it'll be Jarvis Jones, who's going to be a rookie. So either Worlds or a rookie as the other outside linebacker. I think Lamar Woodley could be seeing a lot of double teams this year. So even if he's healthy and in great shape, I don't know how effective he's going to be if he always has to fight 2 blockers. Another one of my concerns with that wide receiver, although according to Chris, maybe I shouldn't be concerned, because I am worried that Antonio Brown took a step back last year, a couple of costly fumbles, and Emmanuel Sanders hasn't caught more than 44 passes in a season. But Sanders is in a contract year, and that has a way of making players more productive. So they really do need. It's good that that Brown and Sanders are having a good camp, because the Steelers really need those 2 guys to be reliable and productive receivers this year. My third concern, everybody talks about the Steelers losing James Harrison, and including me, and the defense loses a lot of its menacing persona without James Harrison there. But what about Casey Hampton being gone? A lot of people are optimistic about Steve McClendon taking over at nose tackle, but a lot of the things that Casey Hampton did for this defense went unnoticed. And McClendon's going to have to do a lot of that dirty work for the Steelers to remain effective, stopping the run, and for that defensive line to really occupy blockers and allow the linebackers to do their thing. So, as much as I would love for the Steelers to do what they did in 2010 and just have a 12-4 season, just because people don't expect them to, well, how much longer is this pattern of coming back really strong and having a surprisingly great season after missing the playoffs? I don't know if life always works out in that tidy pattern-like way in the NFL. So, I tell it like it is. I'm going to be a realistic Steelers podcaster here, and I'm going to stick with my prediction that they'll be 9-7, and they'll be in contention for a playoff spot right up until week 17. But they're probably going to have to do a lot of scoreboard watching to make the playoffs. So, once again, Black and Gold Central is sponsored by Onnit. Lots of great vitamins and supplements. That's ONNIT.com. And Pro Football Central listeners can get 10% off on Onnit products by going to onnit.com/football radio. You can follow Black and Gold Central on Twitter, BNG Central. Or you can just type Black, the letter N, Gold, Black and Gold Central. You can follow me on Twitter at Steel Tweets. That's Steel_tweets. Steelers play their first preseason game Saturday night at 7:30 at Hangst Field against the New York Giants. That's on NFL Network. My DVR is set. We'll have that to talk about next Thursday at noon when we do this again. For now, enjoy summer while you can, and see you next week.
This has been a presentation of the Pro Football Central Network. For news, blogs, highlights, and more, log on to ProFootballCentral.com.